I now request the Leader of the House to initiate the discussion.
आदरणीय सभापति जी, मैं आपका आभारी हूं कि इस महत्वपूर्ण चर्चा में भाग लेने का आपने मुझे मौका दिया है। डॉक्टर भीमराव अंबेडकर के जन्म का ये 125वां वर्ष है और इस देश में केवल संविधान निर्माता के रूप में नहीं, लेकिन एक समाज सुधारक के रूप में, रिफॉर्मर के रूप में उनका योगदान किसी अन्य से कम नहीं रहा। जिस परिस्थिति में वो पैदा हुए, बड़े हुए, जिस अन्याय का सामना उनको करना पड़ा, उससे लोकतंत्र के दायरे में, लोकतंत्र की संस्थाओं में विश्वास रखते हुए उस अन्याय के खिलाफ कैसे संघर्ष किया जा सकता है और समाज उस अन्याय की परिस्थिति से बाहर निकले, उसके क्या क्या रास्ते तय कर सकते हैं, वो मार्ग उन्होंने इस देश को बताया है। जो संविधान जिसकी ड्राफ्टिंग समिति के वो अध्यक्ष थे, शायद बहुत कम लोग जानते हैं कि बहुत कम समय में, कुछ महीनों में उस ड्राफ्टिंग कमेटी ने अपनी कार्रवाई पूरी की थी और उसके बाद जब वो संविधान सभा में जाता था तो एक एक संविधान का अंश जो होता था उसके संबंध में जो उनकी टिप्पणी रहती थी, आज भी उस संविधान की मूल भावना को समझना और उसके पीछे क्या कारण रहे, क्या तर्क रहे, डॉक्टर अंबेडकर के जो वक्तव्य थे संविधान सभा में, वो आज भी समाज के लिए बहुत महत्व के हैं। आज उस संविधान को बने 65 वर्ष हो चुके हैं और पीछे मुड़ के देखना कि इस 65 वर्ष के युग में पूरी दुनिया के अंदर कितने परिवर्तन आए, कितने ऐसे देश थे जहां लोकतांत्रिक हुकूमतें समाप्त हो गई, फौज ने हुकूमत संभाल ली। कितने ऐसे देश थे जहां किसी व्यक्ति के आधार पर तानाशाही पैदा हो गई। कितने ऐसे देश थे जहां धर्म के आधार पर कोई तानाशाही पैदा हो गई। लेकिन ये उस संविधान का एक योगदान था और इस देश में जो लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों को स्थापित किया गया उसका एक योगदान था कि जब कभी हमारी किसी संस्था पर या लोकतंत्र पर खतरा भी मंडराया तो समाज में इतनी ताकत थी कि हम उसके साथ निपट पाए और हर परिस्थिति के उपरांत इस देश का लोकतंत्र और लोकतांत्रिक संस्थाएं और मजबूत होकर बाहर निकली हैं। कई बार हमें यह सोचना पड़ेगा कि 1947 से पहले यह देश बहुत बड़ा था। 47 में बंटवारा हुआ, एक ही प्रकार के लोग जब दो हिस्सों में बंट गए तो क्या कारण था कि हमारे देश में लोकतंत्र मजबूत होता चला गया पर पड़ोस में ऐसी स्थिति नहीं थी। और शायद हमारे संविधान निर्माताओं ने, जिन्होंने लोकतंत्र की स्थापना रखी और लोकतंत्र की जो संस्थाएं हैं उसको मजबूत किया, उनका भी अपना योगदान था। मैं कई बार सोचता हूं कि कुछ अंतर ऐसे थे जो स्पष्ट रहे। हमारा चुनाव आयोग ऐसा था जो निष्पक्ष चुनाव करवाता था। हमारी न्यायपालिका ऐसी थी जो स्वतंत्र थी, जो केवल सरकार क्या चाहती है उसको देखकर अपना निर्णय नहीं करती थी। हमारी सेना और फौज ऐसी थी जो प्रोफेशनल थी, जिसने राजनीति के साथ जो एक फासला होना था वो बनाकर हमेशा रखा। और इन सब संस्थाओं का जो हमारे निर्माताओं ने खड़ी की, उनका एक योगदान रहा। और आज हमारा भी दायित्व है कि एक बार मुड़कर इन सब संस्थाओं को, वो संविधान जो डॉक्टर अंबेडकर ने बनाया और हमें दिया, वो कैसे चला है, उसके ऊपर भी एक बार विचार कर लें। अध्यक्ष जी, मैं तो स्वतंत्रता के 5.5-6 साल बाद पैदा हुआ और इसलिए स्वाभाविक है मुझ जैसे लोगों का संविधान बनाने में कोई योगदान नहीं था। मेरे जिस राजनीतिक संगठन से मैं आता हूं उसके जो प्रेरक थे डॉक्टर श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी, वो उस संविधान सभा के सदस्य थे और उनका भी योगदान था अन्य संविधान सभा के महान नेताओं के बीच में एक होने की वजह से। लेकिन आज एक अवसर है इस संविधान का विश्लेषण कर लेना, और जहां जहां हमें लगता है कि इसको मजबूत करने की आवश्यकता है, निश्चित रूप से गंभीरता से उन विषयों के ऊपर चिंतन कर लेना। इस संविधान की जो मूल ताकत है वो मौलिक अधिकार है जो संविधान निर्माताओं ने हमें दिए। स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन के दौरान जो पंडित मोतीलाल नेहरू की अध्यक्षता में सर्वदलीय एक समिति तब बनी थी जिसने एक चार्टर बनाया था, ये उसके ऊपर आधारित है। और मैं मानता हूं कि जो मूल भावना है, द कोर वैल्यूज ऑफ आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आर एक्सप्रेस्ड इन देम। बराबरी का अधिकार, भेदभाव किसी के खिलाफ ना हो, उसकी एक मूल भावना, अभिव्यक्ति का अधिकार, देश में कहीं रहने का अधिकार, जिस मजहब या धर्म में विश्वास है उसको प्रचलित करने का अधिकार, यह संविधान की मूल भावना है। और आज कई बार इनके ऊपर भी संकट आया है। और मैं 2 विशेष उदाहरण देना चाहूंगा जिसे मैं मानता हूं कि संविधान सभा में जो बनाया गया उसके कई बार सुधार की भी आवश्यकता थी। संविधान सभा ने यह लिखा था कि जब देश पे गहरा संकट आए तो मौलिक अधिकारों को सस्पेंड किया जा सकता है, और उसकी एक बहुत बड़ी कीमत इस देश को अदा करनी पड़ी थी। और इसमें सबसे अधिक योगदान जब 1977 में श्री मोरारजी भाई की सरकार बनी तो एक बहुत बड़ा सुधार करने का उनकी सरकार का था। The original constitution provided that Article 21, which speaks of life and liberty for every citizen, and that life and liberty cannot be denied to anyone without a due process. The Constitution had used a different language, but the courts have interpreted it more liberally now. During the 1970s, one of the biggest challenges we faced was Article 21 was suspended. And the government succeeded in convincing the Supreme Court that if Article 21 is suspended, because it was suspendable, the citizens of India have lost the right to life and liberty. This was dictatorship at its worst. सबसे बड़ा अधिकार जीने का अधिकार है। आज तो टेलीविजन की स्क्रीन पर कोई आदमी आकर गैर जिम्मेवार बयान दे दे तो हम उसको इंटॉलरेंस मान लेते हैं। उस वक्त तो यह स्थिति थी कि आपको नाजायज तरीके से आपका जीवन भी छीन लिया जाए। Of course, there is no comparison. The difference is between a mouse and a molehill.
Silence, please. Please, silence, please. Continue.
So the argument was that Article 21 is suspendable. People lose the right to live. People lose the right to liberty. They can be jailed without reason. They can be killed without reason. And people will have no remedy. And those who now claim to swear by the Constitution supported this position. It goes to the credit of our Prime Minister Shri Morarji Desai and his government.
Please. Sardarji, please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please allow the discussion to continue. बैठ जाइए आप बैठ जाइए भाई। Why are you taking precious time? Please sit down. Continue. Please बैठ जाइए आप। जब आपकी बारी आएगी आप बोलिएगा। अभी बैठ जाइए भाई। Please continue.
Sir, it goes to the credit of the government, and since that government was comprised mostly of people who had suffered because of the suspension of Article 21, that they realized this great gap in the Constitution, that the Constitution was amended, and rightly so, and Article 21 was made permanently non-suspendable. So today we are far more safe and far more secure. So one more change. Normally fundamental rights, and this is the wisdom of hindsight, should never so easily be interfered with. Getting carried away with the economic policies of that time, let us just remember, I'm just flagging this point and leaving it at that. One of the rights, the fundamental rights that the Constitution had given to every citizen was also the right to own property and acquire property. It was a fundamental right. since we were then swayed by a different set of economic policies, there was a big campaign, and the only fundamental right which has been repealed in India during the 1970s was the right to property, to own and acquire property. This was subsequently then brought in as an ordinary constitutional right under Article 300 capital A. I am not advocating anything else, but during the last few years, when the debate over the land bill has taken place in this country, I would just urge all honorable members and other thinkers in Indian society to ponder over the fact, just as a part of transient economic thinking at any given point of time, should we get so overswayed and tinker with fundamental rights? I am just flagging this issue. And since we are discussing the constitution which Dr. Ambedkar had drafted, and he had put this as one of the rights, we thought it was progressive enough to repeal it. And then 40 years later, we came out with a contrarian argument in the land bill. I think it is about time that the last 70-year debate on this issue, some of us must now try and revisit that short-term vision in dealing with constitutionalism is not necessarily the correct perspective to have. So the other high point of the Constitution, which we need to today analyze, is the concept of federalism that Dr. Ambedkar envisaged. संघीय ढांचे के संबंध में कई प्रावधान किए गए, लेकिन पहले 20-30 वर्षों में संघीय ढांचे का इतना महत्व है, ये बात समझी नहीं गई, क्योंकि उस वक्त लोगों को लगता था कि शायद देश की एकता बरकरार रखनी है, सॉवरेनिटी एंड यूनिटी इज टू बी प्रिजर्व्ड, और उसके लिए यूनिटरी स्टाइल शायद बेहतर होगा। मैं जिस विचारधारा से संबंध रखता हूं, मेरे भी नेताओं को उस वक्त शायद कभी यह विचार आता था, लेकिन जब वो खतरा टल गया और हर प्रांत के अंदर मैं अपने प्रांत को मजबूत करूं, अपने क्षेत्र को मजबूत करूं, यहां लोगों का विकास हो, तो फेडरल फीलिंग्स इन इंडिया हैव बिकम रियल एंड जेन्युइन, एंड देयरफॉर इट्स अ रियलिटी वी हैव टू रिकॉग्नाइज। More financial power to the states is one high point which we have been evolving over the years. There is a second high point. How many times in the first 40 years, when we almost had a one-party rule at the center, was Article 356 used against the states? The moment we realized the high importance of federal politics and the federal character of India, you had coalition governments, you had regional parties emerging, you had regional parties becoming extremely important part of central governments. This has led to the strengthening of federalism, and that is why we now proudly use words like cooperative federalism. And one great aspect of it has been that after misusing it several times during one-party rule at the center, the misuse of Article 356 in India has gradually been phased out. And therefore, these days, the fears of 356 being violated repeatedly or repeatedly being used against the states have disappeared. There is hardly a regional party here which I think judiciary played an important role. I think the emergence of regional parties as part of the central government played a role. And the fact that this misuse is counterproductive also played a role. So the important aspect I think we need to seriously introspect is also our strength of our democracy and constitution, the institution of free and fair elections. But earlier, the Election Commission has become a very professional and a competent institution. The largest global election it can conduct with utmost ease. There was violence, there was booth capturing. Election Commission has now devised methodologies to overcome it. Now for the last 10-15 years, we don't hear of booth capturing. But there is one challenge we have to seriously introspect: the excessive use of money power. And that is a challenge to which we still have to find a solution. So this brings me to two important issues. One relating to the separation of powers and the second relation to the independence of judiciary. The separation of powers between the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, I think was one of the core ideas Dr. Ambedkar gave to us. Independence of judiciary, I straight away concede, part of the basic structure, absolutely essential. But 2 points which need to be flagged in this are: if there is a dilution of separation of powers which is taking place, the dilution is not coming from either the executive or the legislature. It's not coming from central governments, it's not coming from state governments. In fact, what started as a positive note in terms of activism by courts, at times a question is raised that does it cross the Lakshman Rekha of separation of powers? And the argument given is, if the legislature and the executive don't act, we have a power to interfere. Well, you have a power to direct, but power to assume the function of a legislature or the executive, I think, is something which goes beyond the concept of what Dr. Ambedkar in the separation of powers envisaged. And therefore, we require today, as we pay our tributes to Dr. Ambedkar, to realize that judicial statesmanship and an equal amount of statesmanship and vision by the executive and the legislature to maintain this delicate balance is required. No law can maintain this balance. But it's an element of self-disciplining which is required to maintain this balance, because once this delicate balance is upset, the constitutional balance itself will be upset. And therefore, I can count hundreds of illustrations, and people who have more experience than me in state governments will give many more. How many calories are to be fed to the terrorist when a security operation is on? There are no judicially measurable standards by which it can be determined. It's for the security forces to decide. How many bullets are to be fired in an encounter can't be determined by courts. How are town planning schemes and clearances to be done? Are people going to be uprooted completely overnight? The social responsibility of looking after them also belongs to the states. So these are factors in the separation of powers which we will have to keep in mind. I don't think there is any section of this House which would ever say that independence of judiciary is not a part of the basic structure. But sir, I have said it outside, I have no hesitation in repeating it. The spirit of the original Constitution in matters relating to the judiciary, today the absolute contrary of what Dr. Ambedkar had envisaged and stated is happening. Article 124 and 217, which deal with the appointment of judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court, Dr. Ambedkar in his intervention said in the Constituent Assembly, is this power to be left to the judiciary alone? And he said the answer is no. Is it to be left exclusively? Is it the last word to be of the executive? The answer is no. It has to be done by a consultative process. And therefore the Constitution that he framed clearly said the President of India will appoint in consultation with the Chief Justice. And today we have reached a situation where the Chief Justice or the Collegium will appoint and everybody else is irrelevant. Can the Constitution ever be interpreted to mean the opposite of what the Constitution says? No principle of interpretation of law can ever justify that. Secondly, the rationale on which it is based is that independence of judiciary is a part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Of course it is. But then Parliament is also a part of the basic structure. An elected council of ministers and a prime minister are also a part of the basic structure. The leader of opposition expressing the alternate view in Parliament is also a part of that basic structure. Now to say only one basic structure will prevail and the others become irrelevant again upsets the delicate constitutional balance that Dr. Ambedkar gave to this country. And I think it is extremely important, while we pay tribute to him, we certainly discuss and ponder over these ideas that he gave, and to the extent that we have deviated away from them. Sir, improvement in those ideas was always welcome. Decentralized democracy in terms of panchayats and municipalities. It evolved as Indian democracy evolved. An experiment which has served us well. And I think the most important, the whole concept of affirmative action. Affirmative action was not creating a preferred class. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने यह कहा, संविधान ने यह कहा कि सबको बराबरी का अधिकार है. जात, धर्म, मजहब, कास्ट, क्रीड के आधार पर कोई भेदभाव नहीं होगा. लेकिन जो सामाजिक या शैक्षणिक दृष्टि से पिछड़े हैं या जो एससी या एसटी है, उनके लिए विशेष कदम उठाए जाएंगे. ये संविधान ने कहा. And the object behind this was that whereas all human beings were created as equals, a social structure has made some as unequal. And therefore, affirmative action is required to bring them to the level of equality. That is the concept of Article 15(4) that he introduced. And I think it's the spirit of that article which we have to continue to honor and respect. Sir, a large part of the debate, and I've read in the newspapers about what's being debated in the other house and elsewhere, is also on this concept of the freedom of religion. the right to practice and propagate your religion. सेक्युलरवाद क्या है, संविधान में था या नहीं था, इसको लेकर बहुत बहस हो सकती है, मैं उस बहस में नहीं जाऊंगा। मैं केवल इतना विषय उठाना चाहता हूं कि संविधान में चाहे शब्द का 1950 में प्रयोग हुआ या नहीं हुआ, कल्पना क्या थी, व्हाट वाज द कॉन्सेप्ट? आर्टिकल 14 सेड the state shall not discriminate against anyone. Article 15 went a step further and said, on basis of caste, creed, religion, etc., you will not discriminate. And I think this was fundamental to the Constitution. Article 25 said, every man has a right to practice and propagate his religion. Article 29-30 gave some special rights for minorities. What do we conclude from this? The Constitution envisaged by Dr. Ambedkar was not anti-religion or irreligion. It rejected theocracy. The state will have no religion. The state will not discriminate on the basis of religion. The state will have a non-discriminatory attitude, but everybody will have a right to propagate his religion. Now let me tell you 3 or 4 illustrations how in the last 65 years we have somewhat subverted this whole thought.
Arunji, may I just take a minute? Honorable members, I have an announcement to make. We have with us, seated in the special box, members of a parliamentary delegation from the Republic of Slovenia, currently on a visit to our country. Currently on a visit to our country under the distinguished leadership of His Excellency Dr. Milan Brezlez, President of the National Assembly of the Republic of Slovenia. On behalf of the members of the House and on my own behalf, I take pleasure in extending a hearty welcome to the leader and other members of the delegation and wish our distinguished guests an enjoyable and fruitful stay in our country. We hope that during their stay here, they would be able to see and learn more about our parliamentary system, our country and our people, and that their visit to this country will further strengthen the friendly bonds that exist between India and the Republic of Slovenia. Through them, we convey our greetings and best wishes to the Parliament and the friendly people of the Republic of Slovenia. Please continue.
सर, अगर संविधान की ये रिलीजियस फ्रीडम के बारे में कल्पना थी, पिछले 65 साल में क्या परिवर्तन हुआ है? मान लीजिए आज ये सदन दोबारा संविधान सभा बन गया होता और डॉक्टर अंबेडकर इसमें खड़े होकर जो 25 नवंबर 1949 को उन्होंने कहा, संविधान को प्रपोज करते। और डॉक्टर अंबेडकर इस संविधान सभा में कहते, आज 2015 में आर्टिकल 44, ये कोई हम नहीं लाए, द स्टेट शैल एंडेवर टू सिक्योर for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. So if Dr. Ambedkar had today stood up and proposed this provision, how would this House have reacted to it? अगर डॉक्टर अंबेडकर आर्टिकल 44 को 1950 के स्थान पर 2015 में प्रपोज करते तो आपकी क्या प्रतिक्रिया होती? अगर डॉक्टर अंबेडकर
Yes. Let the Honorable Speaker continue.
अगर डॉक्टर अंबेडकर, अब we'll go beyond directive principles now. अगर डॉक्टर अंबेडकर संविधान की धारा 48 प्रपोज करते, 48 2015 में, और उसमें लिखा है, मैं पढ़ देता हूं, शायद आप भूल गए होंगे, The state shall endeavor to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines, and shall in particular take steps for preserving and improving the breeds and prohibiting the slaughter of cows, calves and other milch and drought animals. So if Dr. Ambedkar had proposed Article 44 and Article 48 today, how many of you would have accepted it, as Sitaram Yechury says, even as a directive principle? और केवल ये डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल नहीं था, मैं आपको सीताराम जी बताऊं, इसी भावना के तहत जब पंडित जी प्रधानमंत्री थे, इंदिरा जी प्रधानमंत्री थी, तो आर्टिकल 48 के तहत उन्होंने राज्यों को लिखा कि कानून बनाओ, और पूर्वोत्तर बंगाल और केरल को छोड़ के इस देश के हर राज्य ने कानून बना दिया। मैं आगे मैं इससे क्योंकि सीताराम येचुरी बहुत प्रगतिशील है, उन्होंने कहा कि ये डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल हैं, तो मैं इससे दो कदम, इसलिए मैं थोड़ा आगे बढ़ता हूं। मैं सीताराम जी मैं केवल 65 वर्ष की ये जो वैचारिक यात्रा हुई है उसका जिक्र कर रहा हूं। मैं बहुत सरल एक आपको प्रावधान बतलाता हूं कि डॉक्टर अंबेडकर ने एक प्रावधान संविधान में डाला जिसका बहुत कम जिक्र होता है, आर्टिकल 13, आर्टिकल 13। आर्टिकल 13 यह कहता है कि संविधान में जो मौलिक अधिकार दिए गए हैं, फंडामेंटल राइट्स दिए गए हैं, आर्टिकल 14 इक्वालिटी, आर्टिकल 19 फ्रीडम, आर्टिकल 21 लिबर्टी, लाइफ, डिग्निटी, ये सारे सर्वोच्च हैं, सुपीरियर हैं, और इस देश का कोई कानून ऐसा नहीं बनेगा जो इनका उल्लंघन कर सकता है, और कोई पुराना कानून भी है जो इसका उल्लंघन करता है तो वो कानून समाप्त हो जाएगा। तो डॉक्टर अंबेडकर गेव प्राइमेसी टू इक्वालिटी, लाइफ, लिबर्टी एंड डिग्निटी, द फंडामेंटल राइट्स।
Article 44 that you have quoted, you just go to Article 43A. What is suitable legislation to secure participation of workers in the management of undertakings? Has that been done? Article 45. The state shall endeavor to provide early childhood care and education. Has that been done? Article 46, special care education. You choose, sir, you choose one Article 44, one Article 48. What about providing special care?
Please,
What about providing all this, sir?
please do it when your
So
time
why
comes.
don't pick and choose? That's what I'm saying.
Please,
I think
please continue.
I'm glad that I'm glad that Sitaram's best, my friend Sitaram's best argument is that we must have equality in the matter of not following the law. So because one provision has not been followed, the other should not be followed.
Equality following the entire law.
Please,
Follow the entire law.
I would request all concerned to allow the discussion
Why are you picking and choosing, sir? That is my point.
when your time comes. Please, Mr. Tapan Sen, please.
So now let me make a suggestion.
Just a minute.
I think Mr. Yachuri,
Please continue.
I think Mr. Yachuri on the last, this suggestion may agree with me. Dr. Ambedkar brought Article 13 to say, no law can violate fundamental rights. Let us forget Article 44 and Uniform Civil Code for the time being. So I am not going so far. We still have personal laws across religions which violate fundamental rights. 65 years after he framed the Constitution, are all of us ready to say that all personal laws must be compliant with the Constitution? My point therefore is, this ideological journey that we've had in the last 65 years, what did the Constitution say? The Constitution said no theocracy, no state religion, no discrimination on grounds of religion. But then the Constitution said there are certain aspects which may have either an economic or a social rationale, will have to be preserved. The Constitution said all laws must be compliant with the Constitution. And because we subverted our ideological thinking, we are embarrassed about Article 44. We are embarrassed about personal laws being constitutionally compliant. We are embarrassed about Article 48. And now I'll give you another illustration. I'll give you another illustration. और मैं चाहूंगा कि विशेष रूप से आपके साथ जो हमारे साथी शरद जी बैठे हुए हैं, बहन जी बैठी हैं, ये इसका विशेष रूप से ध्यान दें। और ये बहुत गंभीर विषय है। संविधान में दो वर्गों को दो सुरक्षाएं दी गई। एससी एसटी को और सोशली एजुकेशनली बैकवर्ड्स को आर्टिकल 15 के तहत विशेष अधिकार मिले और उन विशेष अधिकारों का हम आदर करते हैं। अरे प्लीज, इट्स अ सीरियस डिबेट, लेट्स नॉट ट्रिविलाइज इट। सो आर्टिकल 15 के तहत एक पैकेज बना एससी एसटी और सोशली एजुकेशनली बैकवर्ड के लिए। सोशली एजुकेशनली बैकवर्ड में किसी भी धर्म के लोग आ सकते थे। एससी एसटी का एक विशेष दर्जा था। आर्टिकल 2930 बना अल्पसंख्यकों के लिए कि उनको अपनी संस्कृति, अपनी भाषा, अपना धर्म, उसको प्रोटेक्ट, प्रिजर्व करने का अधिकार है। अपनी शैक्षणिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस को प्रिजर्व करने का अधिकार है। उनका प्रशासन करने का अधिकार है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने आर्टिकल 15 के अधिकार पे कहा कि 50% से ज्यादा रिजर्वेशन नहीं होगा और आर्टिकल 2930 में कहा कि जो माइनॉरिटीज एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन चलाएंगी वहां 50% उनको अपने बच्चे दाखिल करने पड़ेंगे। दो अलग अलग पैकेजेस दे दिए गए। आज एक नई सोच आ गई कि एक वर्ग को आर्टिकल 15 का प्रोटेक्शन मिलेगा, एक को आर्टिकल 2930 का मिलेगा। अब राजनीति की मजबूरी यह थी कि जो धर्म परिवर्तन कर ले
उसको 15 का प्रोटेक्शन भी दे दो और आर्टिकल 30 का भी दे दो. I hope I'm clear in what I say. Article 15 was meant for SC, ST and educationally, socially backward. Article 29, 30 was meant for minorities. So you can choose which package you are in. But if you convert your religion, you are entitled to both. The Justice Ranganath Mishra committee that the UPA appointed said so. You have not been able to implement it. Now, was it ever Dr. Ambedkar's thinking that such a perversion in the constitutional process be brought about? That you will create a category which gets the advantage of 15-4 reservation and Article 30 reservation, and hence incentivize conversion and change the demographic character of India. And without going into the seriousness, and this is my point is, we stand for a constitution where there is no state religion, where there is no theocracy, there is no discrimination. But please seriously introspect the subversion in the ideological thinking in the last 65 years, which has been brought about, which has actually brought these changes as far as the thinking is concerned. And 65 years later, we have to stand up and say, if we are to honor the spirit of what Dr. Ambedkar drafted, we must honor every aspect of it. Sir, one of the dangers...
Justice Ranganath Mishra Commission was asked to look into the social discrimination by the Dalits even after getting conversion into Christianity. In that context, the recommendation was make reservation religious neutral because they have gone to empirical evidences where certain atrocities were committed on the Dalit Christians, not based on their Christianity, based on their social status. So, with a number of, number one, number two, sir, even our friends from the ruling benches say reservation should not be based on religion, that's fine. But when you are a Hindu, you get a reservation. But you are a Dalit, but you are in another religion, you don't get reservation. In that context, Ranganath Mishra...
You sought a clarification, let him give it.
That's it. No, it's not correct to say you need both the advantages. No. You give only one advantage.
Right. Okay.
What is the social, economic backwardness?
You have made your point. Thank you. आपका क्या point है? देखिए
341 पर जो रिलीजियस कैप लगाया गया 1950 में, मूल संविधान में उसकी व्यवस्था नहीं थी. तो क्या वही क्या जो बाद में सिखों को उसमें जोड़ा गया, सिख भाइयों को, बाद में बीपी सिंह सरकार के समय नियो बुद्धिस्ट को जोड़ा गया, इसको क्या आप गलत मानते हैं?
देखिए जब आपकी बारी आएगी आप ये सब कहिएगा. प्लीज कंटिन्यू.
सर, हम लोग आज इस देश में, पूरे विश्व में सबसे बड़ी चुनौती जो किसी भी संवैधानिक व्यवस्था को है, वो पूरे विश्व में आतंकवाद को है. और आतंकवाद सीमा पार से हो, लोग आए या देश के भीतर से हो, उस चुनौती का सामना हमने करना है. कई बार वोट की राजनीति के लिए किसकी कितनी निंदा की जाए, हम इसमें संकोच करते हैं. यह इसी 65 वर्ष का एक परिणाम है. जिन्होंने संसद पे अटैक किया, जिन्होंने मुंबई में अटैक किया, और यह तो एक विडंबना है कि संविधान दिवस 26/11 और मुंबई का अटैक भी 26/11 था. जिन्होंने ट्रेन अटैक किया, मैंने जो मुंबई में द सीरियल ब्लास्ट which took place on the train when the accused was being punished, the manner in which some segments passed him as a martyr, somebody who virtually massacred Bombay, what would...
Please sit down, please.
Sir, what would...
Please. दलवाई साहब बैठ जाइए, जब आपकी बारी आएगी आप बोलिएगा. प्लीज सिट डाउन, प्लीज सिट डाउन, प्लीज सिट डाउन, प्लीज सिट डाउन. When your turn comes, speak. बैठ जाइए. दलवाई साहब जब आपकी बारी आएगी आप बोलिएगा. प्लीज दलवाई साहब, प्लीज जब आपकी बारी आएगी आप बोलिएगा. बहुत समय है इस डिबेट में. चलिए, प्लीज कंटिन्यू.
So what would Dr. Ambedkar, how would Dr. Ambedkar have reacted to this? So one of his most important speeches,
Honorable members, please, order in the house.
So one of his most important speeches of Dr. Ambedkar is the one he delivered on 25th November 1949 while proposing the constitution document. It was quoted yesterday in the other house that constitution ultimately successful depend on the men who administer the constitution. He had also in the same speech said कि political democracy जब तक social democracy नहीं बनेगी और equity और न्याय नहीं आएगा तब तक purpose नहीं serve होगा. But there was a third thing that he said in that speech also. And I don't know why people leave out that third thing. And this is in the context of the point I was making. That's para 2 of his speech. And I quote him. My mind is so full of the future of our country that I feel I ought to take this occasion to give expression to some of my reflections thereon. On 26 January 1950, India will be an independent country. He actually meant Republican constitution. What would happen to her independence? Will she maintain her independence or will she lose it again? This is the first thought that comes to my mind. It is not that India was never an independent country. The point is that she was once lost her independence, she had. Will she lose it a second time? It is this thought which makes me the most anxious for the future. What perturbs me greatly is the fact that not only India has lost her independence, but she lost it by the infidelity and the treachery of some of her own people. In the invasion of Sindh by Muhammad bin Qasim, the military commanders of King Dahar accepted bribes from the agents of Muhammad bin Qasim and refused to fight on the side of their king. It was Jaichand who invited Muhammad Gauri to invade India and fight against Prithviraj and promised him to help of himself and the Solanki kings. When Shivaji was fighting for the liberation of Hindus, the other Maratha noblemen and the Rajput kings were fighting battle on the side of the Mughal emperors. When the British were trying to destroy the Sikh rulers, Gulab Singh, their principal commander, sat silent and did not help to save the Sikh kingdom. And he goes down. What do these views indicate? When countries are challenged, the countries have to speak in one voice. And therefore, those who seek to destroy sovereignties, the countries cannot be seen to be ever supporting them. And this country's history
Please, बैठ जाइए. Please, he's not conceding. All right.
He has yielded.
Okay, all right, yes.
He has yielded. I would like the finance minister to please elaborate and be specific what you mean that those who want to destroy the sovereignty of India, please inform this house and be clear about it.
Thank you.
Anandji,
Please sit down. Please sit down.
whatever, since he is elaboratedly quoting Dr. Ambedkar, because Ambedkar is the hero of 27th and 29th of November, so far debate is concerned. Whatever he was talking about, the danger of losing the independence, and whatever paragraph now Honorable Finance Minister has quoted, what is the relevance of that quotation in the context of the point he was making?
All right, thank you. Please resume. Arunji, please resume.
I think
Please.
I have no hesitation in saying, I think I was absolutely clear. I was referring to acts of terrorism.
Okay, you're right. Dr. Mungekar, please.
Sir, I was referring to acts of terrorism. When I referred to the attack on Parliament, I referred to the attack on Mumbai and 26/11. And I said we should all be in one voice in condemning them. And I have no hesitation, and you and me being on the same side in that. I have no doubt I have absolutely nothing to say in this regard. I was absolutely clear. It's in that context that nobody in this country should ever be seen as soft on that kind of terrorism which led to that situation. And therefore I said, I supplemented it by saying,
Please. No. Look,
of course you did.
Please allow the speaker to conclude. Shut us up.
आप तो ऐसे ही इतराज कर रहे हैं जैसे मैं इस हाउस में किसी के तरफ इशारा कर रहा हूं। मेरा ये इरादा नहीं है, मैं आतंकवादियों पे कर रहा हूं। I thought this is one issue on which probably the Congress party and us have normally been on the same side.
Please.
And therefore, I am supplementing my point. I am supplementing my point against terrorism and what is happening all over the world by quoting Dr. Ambedkar. And therefore, this is one aspect of his important speech of 25th. So that takes me...
Order, please.
That takes me to one of the final points I wish to make. When we say that there are dangers to the constitutional order, there can be. And dangers to the constitutional order can come when constitutional systems are used in order to subvert the constitution. It is not unknown that this has happened. You don't have to bring a military dictatorship. You don't have to bring an individual dictatorship. There are illustrations in history, and those illustrations in history, and I think the most glaring example of the last century is what happened in the Third Reich in Germany in 1933. A constitution and its provisions were used to subvert democracy and show to the world the worst kind of dictatorship. Sitaram ji, if you save your remark for the next 5 minutes, you'll find yourself in bad company.
Please, no, I'm sorry, when your turn comes, please.
So what did...
No, please.
Arun Jaitley and Sitaram Yechuri were there.
Please sit down. Arunji, please conclude.
Sir, I think all of us, and this would be our final tribute to Dr. Ambedkar and the constitution that he drafted, that we block all systems by which constitutions can be used and constitutional provisions can be used to subvert democracy. And I said that the worst illustration of this in the last century was in 1933 in Germany. What happened in Germany? You had a coalition government. The government did not have a majority. The government said that there is an attempt to set fire to the Riksdag, the German parliament. And they said it's a communist conspiracy to set buildings on fire.
No, please. No more interjections, please. Please allow the speaker to continue.
Using that pretext of a fire, there was a provision for imposition of emergency. The emergency was proclaimed. That was step one. Step two was that you needed a vast majority to amend the constitution to give all powers to the Führer, Hitler. But you didn't have that majority. So you detained all the opposition members. That was the second step. The third step you took was that you imposed censorship on the newspapers. The fourth step you took was that you said all this is in the interest of Germany, so you announced a 25-point economic program. No, I think we need to be reminded of our history. So you impose emergency, you detain the opposition, you amend the constitution, you impose censorship on newspapers, you announce a 25-point economic program, 25-point in Germany. And thereafter, you brought a law to say that no action taken by the government is justiciable in court. So the constitution also was amended. And then you had an important part of the Third Reich called, who was the immediate advisor to Adolf Hitler. His name was Rudolf Hess. He delivered a great speech on 25th of February 1934. It was titled The Oath to Adolf Hitler. The speech ended with a sentence, Adolf Hitler is Germany and Germany is Adolf Hitler. He who takes oath to Hitler takes an oath to Germany. Now you have the most glaring example in the world where you have the most glaring example in the world in Third Reich, and I must say I am only referring to what happened in 1933. That you had a democratic constitution being used in order to subvert the constitution. What happened subsequently in other parts of the world, the Germans never claimed a copyright on that. But you have these illustrations, and therefore, so my final point is, when we reaffirm our faith in the Constitution and in the great document that Dr. Ambedkar has prepared, we must all be prepared to strengthen each of the institutions that have been created. And as far as the government is concerned, the government would be one with you in reaffirming that spirit of 1950, 25th and 26th of November 1949, by which he proposed this great document, and strengthen every aspect of it which I have referred to in my speech today. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much.